Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We've rebranded. We're officially now Self-Publishing Insiders. And if you haven't checked out the podcast yet, go over to d2dlive.com. We're now doing a podcast and a YouTube channel. So check us out there. Sorry if I sound a little rushed. We had some technical difficulties just before the broadcast, so I'm hoping everything's working okay now. But I'd like to introduce my good friend, Patrick O'Donnell. He's the author of Cops and Writers is the title of the book, correct, Patrick? I want to make sure I get that right.
You are correct, sir.
Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege. And I just wanted, before everything else, I just want to let you know that I have to thank you again because the Wordslinger podcast was the first podcast I was ever a guest on. And,
okay, good.
You know, I just reached out to you and I'm like, hey, I'm writing this book. I'm going to start this business, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you were more than welcoming and you really helped out. And I really, really appreciate that because nobody knew me from Adam.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the job description, man. I gotta help introduce people to useful contributors out there. So,
well,
you started life. And I think we're on a bit of a delay, so I apologize if I talk over you every now and then. We'll just try to work around it. But
not a problem.
You actually started life as a police officer, correct?
I did. In my former life, I started as a police officer in January 16, 1995 was my first
to
the police academy. And
yeah.
I retired February 21st of this year. So
That's
did my 25
long
and a little bit more.
Yeah.
Most departments you can retire around the 20 to 30 year mark. You know, there are some departments that let you retire at 20 years, but you take more of a diminished pension. So, you know, you're not maximizing your pension. 25 kind of seems like the golden number for that. So that's very common.
Yeah. So you are probably one of the more qualified people to write a book on this particular topic. I still remember you reaching out to me. We chatted on the phone a couple of times about, you know, just sort of the plan. You were still a police officer at that time, and you were talking about this book. You were working on this book. So what was kind of the inspiration for you to start this?
Well, it's not the first book that I wrote. I already published 4 other books that were either nonfiction or fiction. And I was working on a sequel to a post-apocalyptic book. I like post-apocalyptic fiction. And I started putting myself out there in author groups, going to conferences, and people were always diverting back to, hey, you know what, I've got this character. He's a police officer. You know, she's a detective. Does this sound plausible, this scenario? And I'm like, yeah, yes, no, this is how it would actually work out. You know, I really enjoyed helping people. And then more and more people just started reaching out to me. I remember the first 20 Books conference, somebody came up to me. We were at that little, I think it's called the Ram's Head Bar, kind of in the middle of the jungle that's there. And and she said, you know, could you look at my manuscript, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I guess. And she said, well, how much are you going to charge me? And I'm like, I don't even know. I've never done this before. So, but then, you know, more than one person is like, you should really write a book. There's nothing out there quite like it. And if there is, it's very old and outdated. So I guess I went to that default of you write what you know about. I'm considered an expert when I'm testifying on the stand. So, and I was lucky enough to be a police officer in a very busy city where I've seen a lot of stuff.
It's interesting. I rarely talk to people. I talk to experts all the time, but they rarely get like an official expert credit. So that's pretty handy.
Yeah, it works out pretty good. But you know, I started a Facebook group called Cops and Writers, and that was more or less to dip my toes in the water and see if there was interest. Yeah, I think my editor was my first person in my group. I'm like, hey, join the group. Okay, I want to see if this works or not. She's like, all right. So I had her join, And then before I know it, it's been a little over a year, and I've got close to 2,200 members, somewhere in that ballpark.
It's
And
grown
the
quite
cool
a bit.
part about it has, and I'm really thankful for that. And I have a really good bunch of people, because there's other police officers, forensic people. I have a couple of people that are death investigators. I have a kind of a treasure trove of police resources, and a lot of authors that just have, okay, I'm stuck on this one line. How would I say this, or how would this gun work, or is this realistic? And it's not always me. I'm the administrator. I do have backup, but he's busy because he's a full-time detective. So it takes up a lot of my time. But it works. It works good.
Yeah, I'm a member of that group, and I don't tend to post questions, because most of the time the questions I have get answered sort of vicariously. Like other people will ask something similar to what I'm looking for. So
sure, absolutely.
So what? One of the things. Okay, so one of the things I'm always interested in is, like, what is it that people get wrong most often when it comes to writing about cops?
There's a multitude of things. There's a lot of misinformation out there about police. There's a lot of, like I said, misinformation and misconceptions about what police officers do, who they are. I guess one of the biggest things I see is there's the technical side, and then there's the human side. With the human side, some of the most the biggest errors that I see is they go too extreme from one end to the other. Either your character is a stoic detective that doesn't show any emotion ever, never cracks a joke, kind of like the Joe Friday, just real stone face, blah blah, and that's not true. Or you have the wild rogue, detective that breaks all the rules, and his captain's always yelling at him, and he's going out every night drinking and boozing, and doing this, that, and the other thing that he shouldn't be doing, but at the end he always catches the bad guy. And that's not true. They're human beings. They have families. They like dogs. They've got hobbies. They do other stuff other than police stuff. I mean, like, look at me. I was a cop for 25 years, and I got into indie self-publishing, and I love that community. And it's a real good bunch of people. And I never would have discovered that if I never kind of ventured out of my comfort zone. But I'm not the only police officer that does that.
Right.
So that's like on the human side. And then cops make mistakes. Cops can have drinking problems. They can have pain pill problems. Divorce is rampant in law enforcement. PTSD is a very serious issue. I remember one time I was giving roll call to my cops. I was a sergeant in the morning, and one copper looks up at me and said, "Sarge, how many dead babies is enough?" And I'm like, oh, dude, we gotta talk. Yeah, it is just the things that you see and you go through, and it's not just you. Your family goes through it with you. Your husband, your wife, your kids, your parents, your friends. Then before you know it, your friends are kind of looking at you a little bit differently, like, I wonder if he's one of those, So it really messes with your head as well. So, and as an author, you can use that, build that into your characters, that, they are human beings. They have a job to do, but they're also human beings with human frailties and strengths. Then the technical side, there's a multitude. Most of what you see on TV and movies is complete garbage. Most cops that I know can't even watch TV anymore. It's entertainment. It's and when you're writing your story, you should have it in the back of your head that, hey, you know what? This is entertainment. This is not. You don't have to have it 100% correct. Fiction is entertainment. That's what you should be entertaining your people. There's certain genres and tropes that people are looking for and are expecting. And if you don't deliver, they're probably not going to read your book anymore. But but on the technical side, that's okay. On the technical side, as far as errors go, there's a rank structure in almost every police department. Everybody starts out as a cop, a police officer. You go through some kind of academy. Then from there, you go on field training, which is you're actually in a squad car with a senior officer. Different agencies call them different things. I had a field training officer, an FTO. Then about 4 years later, I became an FTO. I trained new guys. And you're literally graded every day on what you did. And there's a checklist of, okay, arson, auto theft, homicide, rape, bank robbery, just you name it. They try and put everything in there. They don't expect you to go through everything, but they want you to be exposed as much as possible. And like I said, I was lucky enough that I worked in a very busy part of town. I was in the most violent part of the city, and I started out working midnight to 8. So I saw a lot of stuff. I worked nights for 17 years out of my 25. And yeah, I mean, it was very, very busy. Lots of violence, lots of crazy stuff. Lots of chases, lots of all that kind of good stuff. But
so if you're, I'm sorry, the delay is killing us.
Yeah.
So if an author, any type of writer, author, screenwriter, or otherwise, if they're looking to get this right, we do need to take some poetic license, right? I mean,
absolutely.
No, follow anybody on their day-to-day job, and it's probably not going to be all that entertaining. But what's one way writers can make sure that they're getting at least 80% of this right, other than reading your book and joining your Facebook group?
Darn, that's what I was going to say. Oh, you got me.
I got to get the easy answers out of there before you jump on those.
No, okay, besides my book and my my Facebook group, there's a couple of resources that are excellent resources for writers. One is Legal Fiction. It's a Facebook group called Legal Fiction, and there's a lot of there's prosecutors, defense attorneys. If you're looking to see if you want to get the legal stuff right, that's real good. There's another Facebook group called Trauma Fiction, where there's a lot of medical experts. And it's like, okay, if I stab my character in the rib cage in this part, what's the chances of him dying? Or, how can I incapacitate somebody? What kind of drug should I use? Some of the conversations get pretty interesting, I will say. It's like,
no. Now we're back to that thin line between author and serial killer, though. So
yeah. You don't want the FBI checking your Google history, going, it's like, okay, this guy's what about arsenic? And all right, what is he up to? But another good source is an author named Jerry Williams. She wrote she is a retired special agent from the FBI. She has a podcast. I believe it's weekly. And let's see here. And what she does with that is she brings in retired special agents from the FBI or other federal or local law enforcement agencies to talk about a case. It's like FBI case reviews or something like that. Just Google Jerry Williams FBI and you'll find all of her stuff. And then she's got an excellent book, FBI Myths and Misconceptions. The podcast is FBI Retired Case File Review. That's real good. She even has a word puzzle, an FBI word search puzzle. She's got a puzzle book. Yeah, and then Myths and Misconceptions, a manual for armchair detectives. So that's real good. If you really want to get hands-on, many departments will offer citizen academies.
Yeah.
And that's where, as a citizen, you can go, we have one. I retired from the City of Milwaukee Police Department, and they hold a citizen academy at the training academy where we went through. And you have a chance to shoot a gun. You're not going to get sprayed or you're not going to get pepper sprayed or tased, nothing like that. But you will also, but you'll get a chance to hit a bag with a baton. You'll get a chance to do some policey stuff, and you get to hang out with cops. And hanging out with cops is the best teacher. Now, not every cop is. I should probably back that up a little bit, but not every cop is as good as, there's different skill sets and, avenues that they've taken in their careers. Some people will become going back to what I said before, as far as what people get wrong, is there's two distinct paths that police officers take. One is you stay in patrol, or you go over to investigations, or you can go over to administration. And patrol is the meat and potatoes. They're the officers that take the assignments every night. They're the ones that are the first responders to the shootings, the fires, any kind of mass casualty thing. They're the ones who do 90% or more of the proactive policing. They're the ones out getting into car chases, foot chases, breaking down doors. It's, detectives. First of all, detectives are a small portion of any police department. And, like Milwaukee, we had about 1,800 sworn. And out of that, I think we had 200 detectives, somewhere in that ballpark. It would fluctuate between 200 to 300. And that's 3 shifts.
Yeah.
And vacations, all that kind of thing. Excuse me. And we had what we would call a suit and tie detective that would come out to, like, say, the homicide or the robbery. And they come out after the fact. On TV, you see the detective running up to, the shooting victim and nobody else is there yet. No. I mean, what happens is there's some kind of notification system, whether it be through dispatch, or what happens in Milwaukee is we notify through dispatch saying, hey, I have a 23-year-old unconscious but breathing victim. He's got 3 gunshot wounds to his chest. Get me a med unit. Get me a sergeant, get me more cops. And usually if you're going to be dispatched to a shooting, a sergeant's going to show up anyways. We were required to go to those. And then after the scene is kind of calmed down a bit, that's when a detective is going to come in. So it's not 5 minutes later. It could be 30 minutes later. It could be an hour before a detective is going to show up. There are detectives that are, say, in a vice control division or some kind of special operations, like a gang task force or something like that. They're the ones in jeans and a t-shirt and wearing a vest that says police on it. And those are usually with cops. Those divisions are augmented by police officers. And those are the ones that, if a detective is going to be breaking down a door or running after somebody or chasing in a car, they're going to be in some kind of unit like that, most likely. So that's the way that works. And there's a rank system. Police officers and detectives have bosses. On TV and in the movies, they're kind of like free range. It's like they do whatever they want. It's like, no, you have a boss. Say, like, at a homicide scene, I'm in charge of the cops. I'm in charge of the scene. I make sure everything is running smooth, and I keep track of everybody. Then a detective, either a lieutenant or a sergeant or both, are going to show up. Sometimes a captain, depending on how high profile. And maybe a team of 4 to 6 detectives. And their boss is going to say, okay, Kevin, you got the scene. You're going to go in there with your sketch pad and a little roller thing, and you're literally going to measure everything in your scene. Say it's a living room. Okay, my head is 4 feet 2 inches from a fixed object, so like the north wall, etc. So it's a very detailed explanation of what the crime scene looks like. And we'll have forensic people come in. Usually it was only one, but that differs by department. That's another point that I should bring up. Different departments do things different ways. So if you're going to be writing about a specific department, police department, say the city of Milwaukee or the city of Chicago or San Diego or wherever, you should get some background information first and know what you're doing, because people will call you out on that.
There's hardly anything people will call me out on faster than something related to law enforcement.
Well, just like
I know exactly when I got it wrong.
Well, just little things like, in Milwaukee, they're district stations. We had 7 district stations. Out east, they're precincts. They're precinct houses. So you can't like interweave them in your story. You know, it's either or depending on where you're at. I always suggest, you know, do an avatar city loosely based on a department, so you have consistency, but you don't have to worry about being super accurate.
That's true. And when you say Avatar City, that's kind of like saying Gotham or Metropolis. Like a city that may not actually exist, but is just sort of loosely based on other cities, right?
Yes, the Metro PD.
I just want to call that out. Yeah, Metro PD, right? Yeah. Or really get to know the law enforcement, how law enforcement works in your, you know, city of choice. Then, right?
Right. You know, most larger departments will have a PIO. That's a public information officer, and they're approachable usually via email or a phone call and say, hey, you know what? I'm an author. You know, I want to know a little bit more about your department. Now, as a caveat to that, cops are very, very on their guard at all times, not just safety wise, but, you know, somebody's always, you know, trying to dig up some dirt or try to jumble your words around or what have you. So they're very cautious when it comes to that. So going up to a cop that's having lunch and say, hey, I'm an author, you know, could I bend your ear for 5 minutes? They might think, okay, who are you with? What are you trying to get? You know, so that's, I'm not saying that's not the worst thing in the world to do, but, you know, just expect that they may not welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, I've experienced that actually, and you know, my father was a police officer, and there was, you know, I've had police officers kind of in and out of my circle, and you know, there is a sort of level of caution there that, because you don't want to just, by the way, storm up on a police officer no matter where, no matter what he's doing.
Not a good idea.
So
we're usually on our guard. They're usually on their guard, and you know, they don't like being surprised. You know, don't tap them on the shoulder from behind or something like that.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
So I like what you said though. That was actually a helpful tip about contacting you know, the PR department of a police department. And I know the FBI has a similar thing. You mentioned one program from the FBI, but I know the FBI actually has like they actually have a program that's set up for, you know, writers, people who they want to talk to Hollywood writers and novelists about that sort of thing.
Yeah, you know, it's important that the public knows exactly what we do for a couple of reasons. One, they should know. And secondly, you know, if you're going to be drawing for a talent pool of people that want to become officers, they should know what they're getting themselves into. They should have a realistic picture of, okay, and it's like, okay, you know, yeah, that seems pretty cool to me, or that's not my cup of tea. That's not me. So that's important.
So all this is, it seems like, how challenging do you think it is here? I mean, you said everybody gets it wrong. Is there anybody out there who's getting it right, like on TV or films or what? That's the easiest go-to source. It's hard to judge books when it comes to this, but you got any examples of people who get it right?
Yeah, for TV, and usually it's bits and pieces. They're not going to get all of it right, but a good chunk of it right. You know, thinking way back, Hill Street Blues, I mean, the procedural stuff was way off at times, but the interpersonal stuff was spot on. You know, okay, Belker, this tough cigar smoking, you know, undercover detective, was calling his mom all the time. Hey, Ma, you know, you know, that was, and that's real. You know, I mean, some of us have parents that are elderly and we have to take care of, you know, or, you know, the captain and his ex-wife that would be coming in all the time, driving him crazy. Hey, I need more money. I need this. I need that. And he's literally in the middle of this super crisis. But to his ex-wife, the crisis was Frank Jr. needs braces. Yeah, so and he's got like a hostage situation, and you know, she's worried about Frank Jr.'s braces. But it's important to both of them. But you know, it's all about perspective. Modern wise, so the TV series Southland, when that was on, was really, they caught the cop humor and the verbiage really, really well. It was, but, and I realized, this is Hollywood, and you have to keep people's attention. And it's like, okay, you have that really cool chase, and you get the bad guy and all that, but they don't show the hours and hours and hours of paperwork that go behind that. And and they can't, of course. So it's like, oh yeah, this is exciting. 20 minutes of a cop banging away on a computer. Right, exactly. Right. And the other thing they got wrong, and most TV shows and movies get wrong, if you're involved in any kind of death while somebody's in your custody, or say you shoot and kill somebody, you're off the street. Right. You're done. And there's two separate investigations that are going to occur, and it can take up to the minimum that I've seen is about 6 months, and the longest I've seen is a year before the officer returned back to the street.
Right.
So,
and that's part because evaluations and things like that have to happen, right?
Yeah, say an officer shoots and kills somebody. Usually, it's an outside jurisdiction that's going to do the investigation, and they're going to do an investigation that's going to take 3, 4, or 5 months sometimes. They're collecting evidence. There's forensic evidence that has to be taken. They have to interview witnesses. When somebody dies, when one human being kills another human being, it's a homicide. That's not a judgment. That's not, it's just, that's the fact. So they're going to be looking, is this a justifiable homicide or not? Because a police officer puts themselves in that position every day. They don't know. When you go to work that night or that morning, you don't know what position you're going to be put in. And you're going to literally have a second, 2 seconds to figure it out. In whatever decision that you make, you're going to have to live with the rest of your life. So I've been the incident commander for 7 different officer-involved shootings where an officer had to shoot and kill somebody. And I've been the incident commander for officer suicides for people that I know. I've been, I've seen and done a lot.
Yeah.
And one more trope. And what? Go ahead. One more trope that Hollywood usually gets wrong is the cop who shoots and kills somebody, and they're out investigating their own shooting. That does not. If the cop is a victim of a crime, also, they're not going to go out and clear their name. They're not going to go out and yell all that. It does not happen that way.
Right. Yeah. And I think we get some of that every now and then. And I think that there's a level at which we know that that stuff is not real. It just doesn't make any common sense. Right. So, but still, I think there are enough of those shows and movies out there just basically portraying that. I guess we sometimes think that's just the way it is, So it's amazing how much of our attitude towards anybody really, but police officers or anyone else, it's amazing how much of our attitudes are formed by these fictions.
Well, when the CSI series started getting really popular, they were having problems with jury trials because jurors were actually, they're watching a CSI and then they're in a real trial, like say even like a homicide, and it's like, well, how come you couldn't get a fingerprint off that rock? I've seen it on TV. So that's called the CSI effect.
Right.
Where people, they see it on TV or the internet and automatically it's gospel. It's like, well, that's got to be the truth. It's on there, and it's like, nope, not even close.
Yeah.
So, one more tool for authors that I totally forgot about that I shouldn't is the Writers Detective Bureau. That's a weekly podcast, and he's got a Facebook group. It's Adam Richardson. Excellent source. I don't know if I brought that up earlier or not, but that just popped in my head. Great guy, very helpful, and he's got a weekly podcast that he just takes from his, people ask him questions in his Facebook group, and he picks out like 2 or 3, and then that's his podcast.
Yeah. See, I love that there's resources like this, your book and your group, but then there's all these other things. I've interviewed Jeff Simon from who wrote the Forensics for Writers series, which, by the way, amazing. If you haven't had a chance, I love the way that's put together. And your book reminds me of that series as well. Like, it's a very down to earth, straightforward, no, there's jargon, but the jargon is used as an example, not, we're not being talked down to the entire time.
Right.
Well, look, we're at 12:30. I'm going to open things up a little. If you're out there watching on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to pop in and ask us any question you want, and we will answer you. Just ask it in the comments below the video you're watching, and we will try to answer that on air. We got a couple of comments for you, man. Complimentary stuff, actually. So Patrick's group is awesome and an excellent resource. So is his book. I agree.
Thank you.
We got another comment here from Richard. Says, "Thank you for your service, Patrick." So, and I probably should have said that at the beginning. Yeah, that's not an easy job, especially these days. Very, very challenging. So, I mean, in dealing with that sort of thing, like there is a. I don't want to get too political with anything, so let's draw some lines. But
I didn't want to either. Yeah,
no, I don't want to go into current events per se, but there is something to be said for police officers and the public have always had a sometimes volatile relationship going way back. I mean, all the way back to the beginning of the police force, basically. What do you think are some ways that what are some appropriate ways for writers to handle that sort of conflict in their writing? You still want the police officer to be the good guy. So how do you, unless your goal is to portray one as a bad guy, but I mean, how do you deal with that respectfully?
Somebody asked me that in my Facebook group. I think it was yesterday or something like that. They were like, I'm getting ready to release my crime fiction book. And because of the political climate right now and, current affairs, do you think I should even do it? And a bunch of people jumped on. They're like, yes, there will always be a market for this genre. There will always be readers that want to read about, the detective who solves the case or the beat cop that, his daily whatever, that's not going away. And I'll just say one thing. Don't let social media, news, no matter what the news station is, whatever, sway you too hard, because I've been in riots. I've had rocks and bottles thrown at me. I've had bags of urine thrown at me, feces, you name it. I've been shot at. I've had bullets miss my head by about a foot twice in my career. And when our city was literally on fire, maybe about 4 years ago, there was still people coming out. And these, I'm a white cop, and these were going on in primarily African-American neighborhoods, kind of on the down low. Somebody come out and was like, would you like some water, officer? You look really tired. We were working from 7 in the morning till about midnight or 1 in the morning. And not everybody hates us. Another thing that authors might want to look at is police officers, especially bosses, have to go to community meetings. And those can be at schools, churches, whatever. And I've gone to my fair share, and I've never heard one person say, I want less cops in my neighborhood. If it's the exact opposite. They want their own personal cop in their front lawn protecting their house. That's what people who live in these horrible neighborhoods where you're literally a hostage inside your house, where you have to watch TV on the ground because bullets might whiz through the window and hit you in the head. The answer is not less, but more. But there isn't all that hate. And like I said, most of my career, I worked almost all black neighborhoods. And I'm glad that I did. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. I grew up in Chicago as a little kid, so I've seen poverty, I've seen violence, all that kind of stuff. But it was a good experience for me, and I'm glad that I got the experience that I did. But not so I'll circle back to not everybody hates the cops. If anything, there's a huge majority that still like us and support us. So if you're going to write a book, don't put it in there that everybody hates the cops that live in a bad neighborhood, a quote unquote challenging neighborhood. So that's my number one piece of advice.
What would you say are some of the myths that just sort of cling to writing about law enforcement?
The myths. Like, again, I don't want to get too political, and we could go down a rabbit hole that I don't think is productive for either of us. As far
Right.
as, you know what I mean. I think the myth of the actual use of force that officers use to arrest somebody is very, very, very slim compared to the context that officers have with people. And that goes all the way up to, deadly force. It doesn't happen very often compared to the amount of contacts, the amount of whatever. Yeah. So that's a huge myth. That's, it's not going to make the evening news that Sergeant O'Donnell showed up to a family trouble, and when we walked out, everybody was shaking our hands and saying, "Hey, thanks a lot." Nobody cares about that.
Which
That's
is
not going to sell advertising.
The much more common. Yeah, exactly. And that's the more common outcome of those things.
Well, it's amazing how many people I've arrested in my lifetime that thank me. Oh, thank you, officer. Thank you. And they're in handcuffs and they're back of a squad car. They're going to jail. Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, I know I effed up. Yeah, all right. Blah, blah. And, and another misconception is we have this total tension between the arresting officer and the person that they're arresting. Oftentimes we're laughing and joking in the squad car on the way to the jail. I mean, I would much rather have somebody halfway happy. And even if you're not happy, because it sucks to go to jail, at least you can be civil towards one another. But, back in the old days when I was a cop, the police chief spent extra money to take the radios out of the dashboards of the squad cars. It was like an extra $200 or $300 a squad because he didn't want to listen to the radio.
Okay.
So what would cops do? They'd put the radios up on the visors and attach them with rubber bands. I mean, this is a while ago. This is 25 years ago. And I remember I would always ask whoever I arrested, I said, "Hey, what do you want to listen to on the way to jail?" And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, what station you want to hear, man? Come on, let's go." A couple of times we're like singing together and stuff. Like, yeah, all right, let's go. So, to circle back, it's like, it's not all monsters. It's not all conflict. Everybody's a human being.
Stories like that, though, make great details for a book. Like that should be something, because I could imagine somebody has been arrested. They're in this car. The officer asks, "What do you want to listen to?" That's an interesting scene, So yeah, we need more stories like that.
Well, I've got one more that is funnier than funny, I thought.
Okay.
This is cop humor. Okay, so it's 2:30 in the morning. I was working 7 at night till 3 in the morning the last 4 years of my night shift career as a sergeant, and I heard that a couple of cops, you could tell that there was a lot of tension in their voice. They were asking for more cars, which means that there's going to be a fight. There's going to be something bad is going to happen. And there's indicators. You can tell when somebody's about getting ready to throw down. And you're like, all right. I'm like, I get done with work at 3. It's 2:30, but I'm 2 blocks away. I'll go. So I go, and it's 2 of my cops talking to this one guy, and he only understood Spanish. Yeah. And the scene was a card game off to the side with 4 or 5 guys who weren't very happy that we were there. Nobody spoke English, but thank God one of my officers spoke fluent Spanish. So he was having a conversation talking to them, and the guy had a broken bottle in his hand, and the floor was nothing but spilled beer and broken plates and broken bottles. And I'm like, oh.
Right.
And he's like, Sarge, he's got to go to jail. And I'm like, okay. So first, you start talking, and he ain't talking. He ain't happy, but he's highly, highly intoxicated. Anybody that's had to deal with drunks, they're not very reasonable people, so I'm like, all right. So I don't want to see my guys get hurt. One of my guys took out his expandable baton. That's about, this big, maybe a little bit bigger. And it's a metal expandable baton instead of the big piece of oak that, beatmen still carry today, or in the old days, that's all they had. And he did a couple of baton strikes. This guy just looked at him and smiled. Most people they'd just topple, but didn't do a thing. And I'm like, oh God. So I saw my opening. I grabbed him by the head. I took him to the ground, and we're literally sliding around on this floor that's nothing but broken glass, broken plates, and beer. And I'm like, oh, God. So this cop is doing the baton strikes, but instead of hitting him, he's hitting me. Right. He got my shoulder, my knee. He was like, stop resisting. Bang. I'm like, ow, ow. I'm like, Martin, stop it already, for God's sakes. This hurts. So, yeah, and that's not uncommon. You know, all you see is arms and legs flailing all over the place. Sometimes you're going to hit your own guy, or you're going to spray your own guy with pepper spray, or that stuff happens. It's happened to me.
Yeah.
And so the fight continues, and he's got this broken bottle, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to end this right now. So I grabbed him by the head and I smashed his face into the ground, and he looked up at me, and I did it a couple more times. Then finally he let go of the bottle. We handcuffed him. We took him to jail. So he's sitting on the bench outside. I'm collecting all my stuff because it's the end of the night. And he says something in Spanish as I'm walking by, and the cop is laughing his butt off. And I'm like, Martin, what's this all about? He says, I'll tell you when you get inside. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. So I'm like, okay, what was he saying? He said, he kept on saying you were the one who brought the lightning. I said, brought the lightning? He says, yeah, every time you smash his face into the ground, you saw stars. And he thought he was seeing lightning. And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to go out there and like, I'm the one who brought you the light.
There you go.
We just, I mean, I had an interpreter, but I mean, there was a situation where potentially it could have been a lethal force situation. And then an hour later, we're laughing about it. Now, life isn't always that convenient, but you know, it's not, we hate each other so much, that kind of thing. And sometimes, you know, there is animosity, you know, people are human beings, but more times than not, it's not.
Yeah. That's probably the thing people should remember when they are presenting police officers or anyone in their fiction, but you know, human beings, we don't always act according to a script or according to a stereotype or something like that. Like there's those human elements are what make those stories interesting to us.
Right.
So you are you working on anything else related to this? You got another book coming out for this?
I do. I have Cops and Writers 2, and that's going to be crime scenes and investigations. The first one was from the police academy to the street, where it was a basic, you know, you're a civilian, now you're a cop. How do you become a cop? You know, what's the training like? What's life on the street like? What are the different divisions and specialty units? You can kind of go into that kind of thing, some basic information. This book is going to be, okay, you get to the homicide scene. Who does what?
Right.
What is a crime scene? Who's responsible for what during this scene? Yeah, so that's cool. And then I also go into some interview and interrogation techniques. You know, as far as, you know, like suicidal subjects, somebody on a bridge. I've done that numerous times in my career. I had a guy one time with a butcher knife, and a bunch of cops are around him. He's got it to his chest, and we're like, dude, you know, don't do it. And he looks at us and he smiles, and he plunges it in his chest, and everybody freezes. It was kind of like did he just do that?
Yeah.
And the guy takes off running, and we're like, huh? I mean, he didn't make it very far. He made it about, you know, like 20 feet, 25 feet.
Right.
But he survived. And then a year later, a year to the day, I get a call for a subject with a butcher knife to his chest in a different part of the city. So I go to that, and sure enough, it's the same dude. And I'm like, really, dude? And he's like, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, okay, one thing. Just remember how it felt last time. Yeah. Just, you know, close your eyes and remember, how did that feel last time? And he's like, yeah, you're right. And he dropped the knife, and that was the end of it.
Wow. Good, though. That was a peaceful resolution.
Yeah, we always try that. I mean, it's not always possible. And most of the time, they are peaceful resolutions. Sometimes they're not.
Yeah. Well, we're at time, Patrick. I've really enjoyed this. I'm always fascinated by this. I study this pretty frequently because it goes into my fiction quite a bit, but it's good to know that there are these resources out there, man. I'm looking forward to your new book. That sounds like one I really want to get my hands on.
Yeah, it's I'm doing a lot of consulting for people like authors, and my wife is like, you should stop doing that and just finish your book, because I've already written it. I'm doing the rewrites right now from the editor, and it just it's like pulling teeth. Yikes.
Yeah. But this is the kind of stuff that will help make the book even better, because you're getting the feedback.
That is true. Well, look, that is true.
I really appreciate you being on. Everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. I've got at the bottom of the screen right now, you can see copsandwriters.com. That's a fantastic domain name, by the way, Patrick. So make sure you go visit Patrick online and make sure you pick up his book. And since you're here, since you are watching either on YouTube or Facebook right now, make sure you subscribe to one or both of those things. We'd love to see you over on youtube.com/draftdigital. or here on facebook.com/draftdigital. Go to /draftdigital on pretty much any social media platform. You'll probably find us. And of course, we always tell you to bookmark D2D Live, but we also now have a whole new domain name, selfpublishinginsiders.com. And that's where you'll find, that's going to be pointing, right now it's pointing to blog posts on our blog at draftdigital.com. But if you go to Self Publishing Insiders, we're going to be fine-tuning that, making sure you have access to the podcast, the YouTube stuff, everything in one place. And you'll get to hear from great guests like my good friend here, Patrick O'Donnell. Thank you, sir, for being on the show. Thank you for your service as a police officer. And we really appreciate you coming by.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Got it. All right, everybody. Thank you as well. And we'll see